For those of you that don't know me, I think most people here know me, but my name is Kyle. I'm the youth director here, and Kevin, or Rev Kev, was not able to be here today, so I got the opportunity to come up and deliver the message, which I was very, very excited to do. It'll be my first time to do this with y'all, and if you haven't met me yet, you know that I love to talk, so get ready. But me and my wife, Alex, have been here for about 6 months now, and I think that I've really gotten a chance to meet a lot of you and get to know you and get to know the way the church goes, and I really wanted to take this opportunity for you guys to get to know me. As much as I've tried to let you guys know my story, sometimes it's hard. So I'm going to take this moment to just share with you guys kind of my testimony, my story, coming to where I am and how I got here. And it's probably pretty similar to most people's. But when I was a kid, I was born in Galveston Island, so I was a boy. Those of you know what that means. I didn't come from a wealthy household. I didn't come from a middle class household. I came from a pretty bottom of the line. And I don't mean that as woe is me. I just mean that I didn't have the best circumstances as a child. I slept on a couch. My parents had a bedroom, my sister had a bedroom, or two of them shared a bedroom, but I slept on a couch until I was probably 12 years old. But I grew up in the church. I grew up in a Methodist church in Galveston called Moody United Methodist. And when things are hard at home, I always had church. And my parents always instilled that in me, that anytime I didn't know what was going on, or I struggled with something, or I was upset that I didn't have some of the things that maybe some of my friends have, I always had church. And at church, everything felt really equal. Moody United Methodist is actually a very wealthy church. So most of the people in that church were bigwigs in town and stuff like that. So a lot of the kids there were way above me. And I'm not super materialistic. I'm just kind of laying the ground here. But as a kid, I saw the other kids in church that had like just ridiculously fancy clothes or really nice toys. I mean, back then I had some friends who had cell phones, which is crazy. You know, that was like early 2000s. So, yeah, there you go. But there was obviously a difference in me and between some of these kids that had way more than I could ever dream of. And I was really scared to open up to them about how my house was. I was really scared to invite friends over to my house, because as soon as I would bring a friend over to my house, they would always say, "Where's your room? What does your room look like?" And that would always break me. It would always just kind of like knock me down a peg, because I was like, I don't have a room. You know, and so they'd be completely blown away by that. I'd be kind of shut down at one point. It was really hard for me to handle as a kid. But when I was in church, that stuff didn't matter. When I was hanging out with those people, we were just hanging out. And there's always petty little differences and arguments that you get in as kids, but we didn't try to drive into each other that we didn't like each other. Now, when I was at school, things were very different. It was very hard to relate with kids at school because I didn't have a similarity with them, unless they were kids that were kind of in the same situation as me. I didn't have friends who had money at school, but I had friends who had money at church. And I promise you I'm not super materialistic. I keep talking about money, but there's a reason. So, as I grew up in the church, I saw this, and I really wanted to keep being a part of this. And it made it really hard for me to relate with people outside of church. And so I had this I was kind of the dorky kid that only had friends at church, and everyone else at school made fun of me because all I talked about was church stuff. But as I got older, things started to get a little different. I made a couple friends. I moved from Galveston to League City when I was in junior high, going into high school, and I didn't really get along with the kids at League City, at the church. And so I made friends, and I kind of got in a bad crowd, but they were friends that liked me, and they wanted to hang out with me, and they would call me whenever they were going to do something, so I was super excited to do that, you know. For any 14, 15-year-old kid, if they have someone call them asking to hang out, they're going to go. So I got involved in a lot of stuff I probably shouldn't have. I wish I didn't, but at the same time, I'm kind of thankful I did because it led me to where I am now. Went to a lot of parties, hung out with a lot of people that probably I shouldn't have, but it made me grow. It taught me the right direction to go because it led me in a direction that I did not want to go in. When I got there, I was like, wow, this is horrible. And it kind of sucks to see some of those friends. I see them around town every once in a while, and they're still kind of in that place. And so it's hard to see that they went in that direction and it kept going when I was able to turn around. And I know now that it was because of my base in the church as a kid. I know that because my parents led me in that direction, I was able to come back to that direction once I led away from it. But it didn't really happen until after I was out of high school. I was probably 20 years old, and I was at a mission trip for a junior high group. It's called Summit. We were I think we were actually in Rockport. We just got hit with a hurricane. But I was just there as a helper. I didn't work in a church like that. I just kind of volunteered to go. The church really needed somebody, and I just kind of raised my hand and said, I'll go. There's nothing can be wrong with that. And on the last night of camp, the speaker for the week got really violently ill, and he had to go to a hospital. The director of the camp kind of lost his bearings and didn't know what to do, didn't have anyone that would speak. And my youth director at the time, the youth director of the church, came to me and said, hey, will you do this? Will you give a little morning devotional? And I looked at her like she was insane. I was like, I've never done that before. I do not speak in front of people. It is literally to this day, it is still my biggest fear. I do it a lot, but I still get really nervous. I get shaky. Alex has to give me a little pep talk in the morning. But it really does. It freaks me out, but I still try to push through it. But at this moment, I had never done anything before except for maybe speech in high school. I did not want to do it, but I felt like I had to do it. Maybe that just means she was a little pushy when she asked me to do it, but I felt like I needed to do it, so I went up and did it. That morning, I stood in front of a group of like 150 junior high students and adults, and if you know anything about junior high students and their parents, they can be the most judgy people in the world, especially when their mom is in the room. Not trying to make any shots at anybody. But I went up there and I was so nervous. I stumbled through every word that came out of my mouth. I think I stuttered every single sentence. I had a little bottle of water with me, and I kept taking the top off and dropping the top and picking it up and trying to take a sip of water, but never actually taking a sip because it would just hit my chin. And it should have been like a 2-minute thing and ended up being like 10 minutes because I couldn't get the words out. And I just kept thinking to myself, I just got to say amen, I just got to say amen. And I just said amen in the middle of a sentence. And that was it. And I walked off and everyone just kind of looked at me like I was weird. But I walked out of that sanctuary and I turned around a corner and I just kind of wanted to be by myself. I was just drenched in sweat, just super scared about what people were going to say to me. And a bunch of people came to me afterwards and told me I did a good job. Now, I know they were lying, but it felt good to hear that lie. It felt good to have someone tell me I did a good job. But something happened in me in that moment, and I realized that, maybe, I know I didn't do a good job, but maybe I could one day do a good job. And I had a sense of adrenaline and a sense of purpose in that moment that I really wanted to reach for, and I really wanted to grab it. So, in a selfish way, I kind of strive for people's appreciation or people's gratitude when I would do something like that. I would look for someone to tell me I did a good job. And I started doing that in that church back in Lake City. I started going back to church. And volunteering and stuff like that, but I felt like I had a reason to be there rather than just because someone asked me to be there. I wanted to be there. I didn't realize at the time, but I was being led to being there. Once I took that step to do that, at first it was selfish. At first I thought, I want the praise. I want people to say, oh, this guy did a good job. But once I got in there and started doing it, it changed from wanting praise to wanting to do what I was being called to do. I felt that there was no other direction for my life than to do that, and I wanted to make it happen in any possible way. And so over the next couple months, I took as many opportunities as I could in the different youth group meetings and stuff like that to try to take a leadership position for the youth and lead them in a good direction. And 2 years after that, I ended up getting my first internship at Seabrook United Methodist. And that was, it was a bomb of like emotional like awesomeness. And then at the same time, I was so torn down because in order to get that position, I had to give up a job that I was doing. I was managing a restaurant at the time, and I was doing okay for myself. But in order to do that and go to school, I knew that I had to give up that management position. But I knew that management position of a restaurant was not what I was intended to do. I hated that job. I hated going into work every day. I just liked the money. So I gave that up, and I became an intern for a summer. And that summer, I was at that junior high mission trip again, Summit, and we were in a different town, but we had the same director. And the first thing we did when we walked in the door, the director walked up to me, he shook my hand and asked me if I was going to preach for him one day. And I immediately felt like the same I felt that first time, because I felt like all these people were going to remember me and remember how bad I did, and then immediately just project that on me as I'm going to do bad. If any of you have never been to a mission trip with youth, it's really awesome, it's really fun, there's a lot of emotions, and sometimes people just want things to be perfect, and they will never be perfect. And as much as you want to make them perfect, you'll never make them that way, and some people just can't accept that. And I'm one of those people. I can't accept that I can't make it perfect, because I want to make everything perfect. But through that time of me practicing, speaking in public and working on being a leadership leader or being in a leadership role, I learned a lot about myself. I had a lot of mentors. I had a lot of people leading me in the right direction as I was trying to lead others in the right direction. But I realized some things about myself. I realized that when I was a kid, when I would get really frustrated with how I was raised, with the types of the situation that my family was in, I realized that the only thing that really got me through were the people in the church that really took the time to get to know me and took time to kind of help me through these things, like our children's director at Moody United Methodist and the youth directors that I've had over my life. They really showed an interest. It wasn't just, oh, that's really sad. Why don't we'll help your family out, we'll make you dinner one night. People really wanted to hear me, and they wanted to hear why I felt a certain way, and they wanted to help me get over that. And I realized that the reason why I went kind of down that path that I didn't want to go down, where I just felt lost, was because I felt as though it was my fault, or I felt as though my parents were lazy or something, that's why I didn't have what other people had. And it's ridiculous, I know it's dumb. But at that time, when I was 14 and 15 years old, that's what dominated my brain. So the farther I went down that direction, and the farther I thought that way, the worse things got for me. I've lost a lot in my life. When I was 16, I was living on my own. I had an apartment, I had a friend that was a little bit older than me, and he had an apartment, and he said I could stay with him because my parents lost their house, and I completely just blamed them for all of it. I thought that, at that time, I thought that the church that we grew up in, I thought it was a sham, because no one wanted to help them. And I know now that people did go to help them, they just didn't accept the help. But the reason why I talk about the way this happened is because when we look at Jonah, which we read Jonah 2, what the scripture we read is often called Jonah's prayer. And Jonah talks, this is when Jonah's sitting in the belly of the well, and he prays to God, and he says, I realize what I've done. I realize that I ran away from you when you called me to you, and I was scared, I hid, you told me you needed my help, and I just thought someone else would do it. So Jonah is literally on his deathbed. There's actually a part in that verse that says Sheol, which can mean death. It doesn't always mean death, but it can mean death. So Jonah is literally dying. And he prays to God, and it says that his prayer goes to the Holy Temple. It's that God hears him even though he's completely separated from him. I think the farthest part away from God you can think of on earth is probably in the belly of a well at the bottom of the ocean. Other than, I guess, hell. But he prays to him in the deepest, darkest pit in the earth, and God hears him. I don't think of myself as a great person like Jonah, but I do see similarities in what I did in my life. When I was in youth and in high school and stuff, I felt my church asking me to do things and me turning it down because I was too scared. I was too freaked out by the idea that people were going to look at me and judge me for what I was doing. Until that moment when I was asked as an adult to speak at a camp for like 2 minutes. And those 2 minutes completely changed my life. If it wasn't for that youth director asking me to do this, I'd probably not be in church. In that 2 minutes, I noticed, or I realized where I was supposed to be. And I realized by not being in a church, or not being a part of a community that was Christ-centered, I realized that I was not living life the way I was supposed to. There's nothing we can do in this world to run away from our callings. If we are called to be mathematicians, or if we are called to be writers or teachers or whatever, if we're called to be chefs, we're going to do it. Whether we do it as a career or whether we just do it as a hobby, we're going to do it. It's going to find us. And if that's what God is calling us to do, we're going to be there. And if you lead away from it, as we see from Jonah, all we have to do is pray and say, I realize that I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and I want to do. Please show me the way, and He'll show you. Will you please bow your heads?